This meeting of the Cuyahoga County Council Committee of the Whole for the purpose of reviewing the proposed biennial budget for years 2012 to 13 is now called to order. The clerk will please call the roll.
Calling the roll, Mr. Brady.
Present.
Mr. Germana. Mr. Gallagher.
Here.
Mr. Schron. Ms. Conwell.
Here.
Mr. Jones.
Here.
Mr. Rogers.
Here.
Ms. Simon. Mr. Greenspan.
Here.
Mr. Miller. Ms. Conley.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Okay. Ms. Clerk, do we have anybody who has signed in for public comment related to the agenda?
Yes, we do, Mr. Chair. Mr. Don Scipione.
Mr. Scipione, it's good to have you back before the County Council, and you may proceed.
And Mr. Chairman and the rest of council, it is always a pleasure to be here. I'm here today to encourage you to look at the IT budget that's going to be proposed today, not as a cost center. Not as a cost center, but as an investment. And not as a long-term investment, but the best short-term investment we can make to increase the productivity of the county, to ensure the long-term sustainability of the services, and to provide the dollars for long-term investments like early child care. So I encourage you to look at that as an investment, not a cost center. And in the spirit of transparency, I have to say that my company is going to respond to the eventual RFP. We're going to respond, we're going to compete for that business. And in so doing, I promise you, we are going to raise the bar on whoever is the eventual winner of that contract. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your input. Madam Clerk, is there anybody else who has signed in for public comment?
No, Mr. Chair.
Okay, that concludes the public comment prior to today's meeting. The next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes, and we are going to ask for approval of the minutes for each of the two committee of the whole sessions that we held last week. The first one being October 17th. Is there a motion to approve the minutes for the October 17th meeting?
Move approval.
It has been moved by Councilman Brady and seconded by Ms. Conwell. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. The minutes for October 17th are approved. Is there a motion to approve the minutes for the October 18th meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, it has been moved by Ms. Conwell, seconded by Councilman Jones. Okay. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it. The minutes are approved. Before we get into item number 5, the budget resolution, I would like to bring 3 things to my colleagues' attention. The first is that last Friday, I sent out to each of you an email in which I asked each of you that by November 7th, that you would provide to me a list of, number 1, those items that you think should be added to the budget as additional expenditures, and secondly, what items you think could be eliminated or reduced, and third is what your thoughts are as to what extent we can use some of the county's reserves to provide for the needs of the upcoming biennium. The email goes into that in a little more detail, but I just wanted to call it to your attention. The second thing is that that I will be sending out emails regarding the budget process on a regular basis, and these emails are going to be to help you know as much as possible, both in terms of the budget itself and also the process, with the goal being that each member of council be able to be fully heard and have their input into the process. So I would ask you to each pay close attention to your email and to read the budget-related emails. The third thing that I'd like to bring to your attention is that I asked Trevor to prepare for us a new version of the agenda for the budget process, which he has passed out, and it's the exact same in terms of the schedule, but what's different is that after each item, it lists the page number that their budget is presented in the narrative budget document, and I thought that would be helpful to you as we have the hearing to quickly be able to find where the item is in the budget book. So with those items, I would now ask the clerk to please read the resolution.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I'd like to acknowledge the presence to the meeting of Mr. Germana.
Thank you.
Resolution number 2011-0291, a resolution adopting the 2012-2013 biennial operating budget and capital improvements program and declaring the necessity that this resolution become immediately effective.
Thank you very much. That resolution is now again before us, and the first presenter for today will be Sheriff Bob Reed to present on behalf of the Sheriff's Office. Please come forward.
Thank you. Good afternoon. First, I'd like to, if I may, is to thank our staff in the Sheriff's Office who helped prepare the budget, in addition to the Office of Budget Management. Maggie Kean is here today, and also my colleague and Deputy Chief of Staff, Norberto Colon, and his assistant, Valerie Proper. I think we put a lot of time and energy into the budget, and I think it certainly reflects that. Do you want me to just start with a simple overview, Mr. Councilman, Mr. Chair?
To the sheriff, I would appreciate. Sorry. I would ask if you would please present an overview of your budget, and also what items reflect any changes or any additions or deletions, and what you see your major challenges are. And in particular, in your presentation, I would like if you could discuss the evolution of the crime lab and what portion of the separate item for the crime lab represents what used to be in the sheriff's office budget, and how those two interact from a budget standpoint. So those would be the items. Thank you.
Thank you. 2011 was a somewhat challenging year for the Sheriff's Office in reference to budget and personnel. I think the issues in the Sheriff's Office that was a challenge was in issues involving the recruitment and the employment of corrections officers throughout 2011, and actually up to this moment in the Sheriff's Office, we're approximately 24 to 25 corrections officers down from our full staff of 540 corrections officers. In addition to that was the hiring of sheriff's deputies. We are 21 deputies down from our full contingent of deputies. With that creates an issue of an increase in overtime throughout the sheriff's office, not only in the areas of deputy sheriffs, but also in the areas of corrections officers and support staff. Protective services, we saw significant. Let me just go into the overtime issues. With 21 deputy sheriffs down and a significant number of protective services down, and increased responsibility in different buildings throughout the 31 buildings that we protect throughout the county, we had issues of increased overtime. For example, whenever we have a prisoner who has to go to the emergency room by contract, we have to send 2 deputy sheriffs to that. If we don't have those deputy sheriffs on staff to do are presently working, we have to call them in for overtime purposes. Issues, for example, and that goes throughout the sheriff's office in different areas. The court towers, for example, we were significantly short in the court towers, with many demands upon the sheriff's office from the 34 judges that are in the towers, and rightfully so in a lot of areas. We had to reduce the number of deputies that are assigned per floor from 3 to 2. What we did to augment the security need was to bring protective services into the courtroom environment, actually outside the courtroom environment on each one of the floors. So we brought protective services in to help us out on security outside the courtroom, so that deputy sheriffs could actually spend more time within the courtroom environment. In addition to the overtime issues that resulted from protective services going extended hours in the Board of Revisions, extended hours in different buildings throughout the county, where we had to provide protective services protection in those buildings, that also increased the amount of overtime. Throughout, in addition to the issues involving the medical unit in the jail, at any given time, we were down a number of nurses. We have been hiring. Recruitment is sometimes difficult in the corrections environment. We're doing a fair job with that. We could actually probably do better. At any given time, we may be 2 or 3 registered nurses down from the 22 that we have assigned, 22 registered nurses that we have assigned in the medical unit, and the 18 LPNs and MTAs that are also in the medical unit. 60 actually support staff in the medical unit, aside from the physicians that are assigned. So with that said, in addition to all of those responsibilities that I've outlined, it's also the issue of the Soul trial, for example. We had to take 6 deputies from different floors throughout the Soul trial. Judge Ambrose did a great job in helping us out in certain areas, but at the end of the day, we still had to have six deputies assigned to the Soul trial, in addition to 4 protective services, for the issue of coordinating the media, coordinating the witnesses, the separation of certain witnesses that were at the trial. So it was a challenge for the sheriff's office, but we were certainly successful in the Soul trial as far as security was concerned. The initiatives, the 2012 and 13 initiatives, and I'll open at any time, Mr. Chairman, in reference to any questions you may have as I'm going along here. The initiatives in the general fund, as you can see, the general fund for 2012 is $93 million, same $92 million in 2013, the base budget. The initiatives that we have in the 2012 budget is the impact units, or community policing / impact units, that is adding actually $1 million to our budget. It involves the hiring of 10 deputies, or the squad of 10 additional deputies for the impact units that, as you know, will go through the different communities throughout Cuyahoga County, where a police chief may have an issue with robberies, burglaries, traffic issues. The 10 deputies actually have been selected from our deputies. They are seasoned deputies that have been in the patrol units, either be it in East Cleveland, North Randall, or in the downtown unit. They have been selected. The vehicles have been ordered. We've had a little bit of a slowdown in reference to the vehicles because due to issues in the new practices under procurement. So that's going a little bit slow. We had hoped that we would have the impact units ready to go on the beginning of November, but it looks like it'll probably be into December by the time we'll have all of our units that have been ordered in and outfitted for these units. Each one of those cars, as I outlined in the past, are going to have cameras in them and all the state-of-the-art equipment that goes along with these with the impact units. That's a $1 million increase in the budget. Let me back up just a little bit on the questions that have been brought to me is that we're so shorthanded. Obviously, we're now taking 10 deputies and assigning them to the impact units. Actually, those are seasoned deputies. We're going to wait until new deputies are hired. We are very, very close to hiring the first 10 deputies of the 21 that we're short. We're in the process of background checks and polygraph examinations, and then the final steps of post-offer physicals and psychological examinations. We're hoping to have the first 10 deputies of the 31 that we're actually going to hire with the 10 from the impact units on board here by the end of October or the middle of November, the rest by January 1st. Let me get into real briefly the issue in reference to medical services in the hospital. In the corrections center. As you know, our contract with Midwest Medical expires at the end of December 2011. We have been working very, very hard with not only internally but also with Metro General Hospital in reference to the issues involving medical. Either today or tomorrow, we will have 14 new positions that will be posted. It is right now going through the legal department. It's gone through HR and others. 14 positions of a medical background. For example, the full-time physicians that we're going to have, the OBGYNs, the pharmaceuticals, the pharmacists, and some other positions that we have in the medical unit that is now being contracted with Midwest Medical. We're hoping that over the next 10 weeks that we have a number of candidates that will come forward and we'll be able to fill some of these ranks in the medical unit. If we do not, by the end of December or mid-December, have all of the positions filled under the direction of Dr. Barnett, who's done a fabulous job with the assistance of our Director of Corrections, Ken Kochevar, has done a fabulous job in putting together the job descriptions, salaries, in addition to the HR department, who's worked really close with us. So they've done a really good job in putting all of these together. If we do not get those positions by the end of the year or mid-December, Metro General has said that they will fill those physician positions until we get those positions filled through our selection process. In addition, and I think just as equally important, is that the nurses, the issue with nurses, Metro General is also going to address with a pool of nurses through Metro General. Right now, we have a temporary service that doesn't do a very good job on getting nurses when we're short. Metro General has said that they will use their pool of nurses so that when we are short, we'll be able to call on them to make sure that we have our ranks filled. This, we all hope, will be completed by the end of December. If I forwarded about 2 weeks ago to you the report from the consultant from Metro General, Jackie Moore, that worked with our medical director in reference to looking at our medical facility, what we needed, and what their thoughts were on the direction and the participation on the part of Metro General. You should have gotten that report and also an up-to-date synopsis of where we are with the medical unit. The Regional Prisoner Project. We're still in negotiations with the City of Cleveland. We gave and presented a budget to the county executive, and then we presented that budget to the City of Cleveland Division of Safety. They in turn have come back to us saying that with their new rules and regulations that they have on prisoners and the issues involving when they're going to be charged and the issues of them being able to reduce the number of prisoners that they have in their system per month. They would like us to look the numbers over again to see if this would impact the budget that we presented to them. Obviously, not increasing it, but decreasing it. So that has been presented to Deputy Chief of Staff Norberto Colon after we have gone through it with our fiscal department to see if, in fact, that number can be reduced. Keeping in place the contingencies and some of the other issues that we have because of this, the unknown, some of the unknown issues that we're going to have with this new group of prisoners that will be responsible for handling. That's been given to the Deputy Chief of Staff. We were going to get together with Cleveland over the next few weeks to see if we can't get closer to some type of an agreement that certainly will be presented to the county executive and then to council. Other issues in the budget, as you could see from our synopsis, we have a number of funding sources, very small in reference to the entire $92 million budget that we have in the sheriff's office. We do have temporary housing for federal prisoners that was semi-successful. We'd certainly like to have more federal prisoners into the Justice Center, but with our population as high as it is, as of yesterday morning, it was at 2159. With the population as high as it is, it's very difficult for us to start and get additional federal prisoners into our facility. Last year, or in 2011 through June, we were able to generate $165,000 from the federal prisoners that we're housing in the Justice Center. Some of the other issues that I think that is a real challenge to the Sheriff's Office is that the issues involving the opening of the Juvenile Justice Center. As you know, and our staff, maybe you don't know, our staff did a great job in the opening of the Justice Center, working with Judge O'Malley and staff at the Juvenile Center. But with all the success stories that we have, we had to go from 11 deputies that are assigned to the Juvenile Justice Center that was at 22nd and Cedar to 23 for the Juvenile Justice Center. In addition to protective services would actually reduce the number of total protective services because we're closing buildings. So we actually reduced the number of protective services from 18 to 16 at the Juvenile Justice Center. But with the number of deputies that we're short, it is a constant challenge for us to keep manpower at the center. As we're going along, and hopefully after the first of the year, we'll certainly be in better shape once we've hired the additional 21 officers in addition to the 10 for the impact units. One success story I think that we have, in addition to a number of others, but one success story is that as far as prisoner board and care is concerned, as you can see in the report since 2008, we had an $8 million budget for prisoner board and care. We brought that down in 2011 to $1.4 million. That's what was budgeted, or $1.5 million was budgeted for 2011. Thus far, we've only spent a little over $400,000 for prisoner board and care. So again, from $8 million down to $1.5 million, and this year we've only spent about 33% of that budget. That goes, the reason I think that there is for that is, one, obviously we've reduced the per diem that we're paying to jails outside the Justice Center. But also, I think we're doing a better job in assessing prisoners that we're sending out. We only have about 50 that are outside the Justice Center right now. In addition to that is the early case management program that we're coordinating with Common Pleas Court to get some low-level or level 5 and 4 felonies, nonviolent felons in and out of the system quicker. With that, we're also doing a very good job in assessing prisoners that we are sending out. We're looking at those prisoners, and we're looking at those that don't not have significant medical needs. And we've also we have a budget for that. Fortunately, so far we've only spent actually $2,100 outside the Justice Center for medical needs for those prisoners, because I think we do a real good job in assessing them before we place them in outside facilities. I think what's going to be the challenge to close, the challenge in the early part of 2012 is to get our new people on board, get them assigned to officers that are going to be their training officers, and being able to man all of the posts that we have throughout the county, and have these officers trained. Fortunately, they don't have to go to the police academy. Our prerequisite to the position for deputy sheriff was that they had their OPATA training already, so we don't have to send them out. These are all going to be OPATA certified officers, but they do have to go through a 10 to 12 week training program for the sheriff's office so that they know what the policies and procedures are from the sheriff's office in the different posts that we have throughout the office. So it's going to be challenging the first 6 months of the year to be able to fulfill our duties that we have throughout the county, in addition to making sure that we don't cheat these new deputies that are coming on and try to cut the number of training days that are involved, because I think that hurts us in the long run. But for the most part, 2011 has been a pretty productive year for us, and we certainly look forward to 2012.
Okay. Thank you very much. Questions by my colleagues?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In my internet reading this weekend, I ran across something in Texas and Tennessee. They're cutting prisoners down to 2 meals a day on the weekends. Now, I don't know how you can do that, because I thought there were federal guidelines. And I know you have to get so many calories and, so many protein and starch and things. And I was just wondering, have you investigated that, or is it a possibility? Because we got 2,000 prisoners at 6,000 meals a day. Yeah.
Actually, yes, we have. I've looked at this with the Director of Corrections. There are certain guidelines in the state of Ohio for nutrition and so forth for prisoners. We could, under those guidelines, actually reduce the number of meals. Here's the issue that we have with reducing the number of meals. As you can imagine, the meal for prisoners is probably the only bright part of the day. So we have breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and cutting down those meals, especially even if we did it in baby steps, there can be some, not repercussions, but issues involving prisoners that look forward to those issues, and some of the ripple effect that goes along with having disgruntled prisoners. Don't get me wrong, I'm not getting soft, but at the end of the day, we don't want to have prisoners and especially staff put at risk, because now we have issues involving prisoners that are unhappy, and when they're unhappy, they're getting in fights, and all of those issues that go along with it. It's still something that we're looking at. I did see the article, and I don't know what the savings was. It was something about $2 million.
Yeah, they say something. I would think also you might have some concerns about people trying to save food for later, which would, call rodents and insects and stuff. So I don't know.
Sure. I think we've done a really good job this past year, and actually the past year and a half, by looking at buying some items in bulk. Mike Soleil, our manager, their kitchen manager, does a great job in watching the market to see where he can buy bananas and other things in bulk amount. And we've saved anywhere from $300,000 to $400,000 in food costs over the last year just by paying attention to buying things in bulk. So we're trying to save money in other areas rather than cut down on the number of meals.
And where are we coming on the kitchen?
Pardon me?
The kitchen, the new kitchen?
Yeah, well, you know what? I guess I should ask Council where we are with the kitchen.
I'll withdraw that question.
Okay. We're getting very close from what I understand.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Questions? Okay. Councilman Rogers?
Great, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Sheriff.
Yes.
I'm looking at the recommended 2012 all funds, and I see an increase here, and I'm wondering if that increase, it's nearly $1.5 million or so. Is that attributable to the new staff for the Juvenile Justice Center? Because well, first let me ask, are these all funds, is that just chargebacks?
No. Well, here, let me answer it. $1 million of that increase is actually from the new community policing / impact units. it is about $1 million that's going to add to the budget from 2011 to 2012. And it's also in reference to the increase in the number of deputies that we're going to be hiring, if I'm answering your question.
Well, I thought the 1 million for the impact units was coming from general fund.
You're right, it is.
I'm going to chime in here. I can answer that question. The all funds number includes the general fund, and it also includes.
I'm sorry, I think I meant other funds, the other funds line item.
The all funds includes everything.
Right.
So
Right.
you see that the general fund numbers is also increased by more than $1 million from 2011 to 2012, which presumably primarily affects that item. And then the all funds is increased by a little more than that, so there's probably some items in addition to the impact unit that's factoring into the all funds component.
Well, I'm sorry, if I said all funds, I meant other funds.
I'm sorry.
Because I noticed from last year, the chargebacks were approximately the same. It's about $10.2 million in chargebacks in 2011, and under other funds, it's about 10.7 million. But then when we jump to the recommended in 2012, it goes up to 12.1 million. And I'm wondering if that's still, that I'm assuming chargebacks are included in the 12 million, and I'm wondering if there's any other funds included in the chargebacks.
Well, the majority of those chargebacks are from protective services. Protective service has a separate budget, but it's charged back to different departments throughout the county, and it comes back in that form. I can't answer that, but I'll get back to you on it, exactly the reason why.
Okay, thank you.
I would point out one item, which is if you look at the decision items, you have a negative of 582,000 in the 212 approved request, and you have positive numbers and you have a positive number in all funds. And if you look on the top of page IV-47, it mentions that the consolidation of human resources and information technology staff, what this had the impact of is, overall it doesn't affect the budget, but it takes those items out of the sheriff's general fund budget and puts it elsewhere, and so it shows up in the other funds component. So that explains part of it.
If I may. Good afternoon, Matt Rubino, Office of Budget Management. Mr. Chairman, in the other funds line, as Sheriff Reed had mentioned, the budget for security services, which is over 11 million, is in that line. So what you're seeing in 2012 is the full annual impact of the new deputies hired for the Juvenile Justice Center, and that's driving most of that increase. The remainder of that other funds budget are some of the smaller special funding sources. Concealed carry has a budget. I think inmate fees has a budget, very small, not a lot of personnel. The security services budget, though, makes up the bulk of that line.
Okay. Other questions by my colleagues?
Thanks, man.
Dan, Councilman Brady, and followed by Greenspan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To the Sheriff. You had touched on in your overview the agreement or your understanding with Metro about the medical unit.
Yes.
You know, as you well remember, Councilman Gallagher initially was involved in this with the council, and we had a joint committee last winter. Long process. I know a lot of people were involved in over a period of many, many months. And I know that you said you sent out an email recently, and I have to admit I didn't catch that, but that's my fault. I just have one question because it's a drawn-out conversation. Do you have, or are you aware of, is there actually a written memorandum between the hospital and either your department or the county in some way, specifically indicating, what this agreement is?
Not as yet. We're actually in the process of working on that with the law department. We're going to have to see exactly what Metro is going to what services Metro is going to have. Are they going to the physicians that they said that they would actually be on loan to us? So actually, we through the sheriff's office and our budget would be paying for those physicians. They had a number of questions as we were going through this process as far as the liability issues are concerned. That was also looked at by our law department, and we're in the process of putting together an MOU that I'm sure that will be reviewed with council.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, follow-up question then. I had been hearing on and off, sort of through the grapevine, and sometimes don't even remember from whom, that this, various times during the summer and late summer, that this was going to be rolled out, that we were going to have closure on this or some kind of closure on this. So here we are now in October. To either the sheriff or the law director, can anybody comment on when we're going to see closure? Because this is an issue that everybody, the council and the executive and yourself and Metro has been grappling with before we even got here, actually, but I'm interested in the time period that we've been here.
Yep, I agree. It went to the councilman. It went very slowly over the summer, and we were getting very concerned that it was going as slow as it was. The issue is that the Metro General was waiting for the report from Jacqueline Moore, the consultant that they had hired through to review the sheriff's office medical, the corrections facility medical unit, and how Metro General was going to help. We thought that report was going to be done sometime in August, no later than August, but it was done later than that, into September. So with that said, it slowed the entire process down. I was getting very concerned over the issues of the positions not being posted. I really wanted to have the positions posted back in August so that we could have more than a 10-week review period for these physician positions and psychiatrists and so forth. And now we are at a later hour. I would have hoped that we had gone quicker, but part of the reason is that Metro was waiting for this report. Although the consultant had conversations with our director, John Burnett, through this period, telling him the direction that they were probably going to go, but that we still were waiting for the final report. So the report took much longer than we had anticipated.
Okay, well, just final comment. I feel like my committee then needs to circle back around. We've been, without naming the individuals that have been involved because they're so numerous, a lot of people have been involved, and I think my committee needs to the council to circle back around and find out where we're at on this thing. Thank you.
Councilman Greenspan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Midwest contract, when does that expire?
December 31st.
And you already have your own in-house medical director, correct?
Correct.
So the deficiency between the service levels, what Councilman Brady was talking about, what you were just alluding to, was as far as the doctors, the physicians, and getting them on board. What's the fallback position should we get to a date, and I don't know what that date's got to be coming up soon, if we're going to hire internally or not? What is that, and what's the process?
That's a great question. And first of all, let me tell you that right now, under Midwest Medical's contract, we have anywhere from 18 to 20 part-time physicians. Under Dr. Barnett's thought is that if we can hire full-time physicians, we will not have to have as many, and physicians' assistants. We will not have to have as many physicians as Midwest Medical under contract with Midwest Medical. We're looking at anywhere from 5 to 6 full-time physicians rather than the 18 to 20 part-time physicians. So the selection process is going to be a little slower than Midwest Medical. We have had discussions with Wexford, which is a temporary service for physicians and nurses, and we're only in the discussion stages with them in case, under exigent circumstances, come January, we don't have all of our people in place. That is a contract that's going to have to be reviewed by the legal department and brought to council. Secondly, I have a meeting with Midwest Medical next week for their final quarter review. And at that time, we'll also sit down with them and say, if in fact we are not in place by the end of the year, would they extend a contract for 1 or 2 or 3 months until we get our staff in place? Now, there may be a fee for that, aside from the fee for physicians, but we haven't really talked to her about those issues. We also need to talk to her about the issues involving the non-compete clause that she has with her physicians. That is an issue because there's a number of physicians that are with Midwest Medical right now that want to come and be on board here January 1st. Those issues with the non-compete clause between the physicians and Midwest is exactly that. It's between Midwest and their physicians. We would not get involved in those issues. We're hoping that there's a little wiggle room on that with Midwest Medical because there's a number of physicians that are absolutely excellent that we'd like to keep on board. So we do have, to answer your question, Mr. Councilman, is we do have a backup plan in place with Wexford. We've talked to them at length, had a couple of meetings with them, in addition to hoping that we would be able to extend a contract with Midwest.
Mr. Chair, the budget, the 2012 budget, what is contemplated in that budget? Is it the hiring of these 5 to 8 physicians versus the 18? Is there contemplation of continuation with Midwest? Is there a hybrid? Where I'm going is, should we be anticipating at where we are right now, effectively November 1st, the expectation that these numbers may go up?
They may. We don't believe so. It may be a hybrid, as you had brought up, between what we'll have to do with Wexford. We believe, here, let me give you the scenario. We believe if we get our physicians the way, if everything goes as well as we hope it does, and we have everybody on board, we believe that the number at 1.8 million right now that we're paying for Midwest will be significantly reduced by having our own staff. We've already looked at that. We've looked at the numbers. I've had those to HR to review. So we think that we could save a considerable amount of money if we have our own staff in place. With that said, if we don't, between having our own staff in place and those that we were going to have to contract out, we'll probably be at the same number that we're at right now at $1.8 million.
Mr. Chair, just a comment. If between now and December, when we pass out this budget, you see something going in a different direction, would you please come to the chair to let us know which way that number may go, up or down?
I will. And over the next 4 weeks is going to be critical as we get these positions posted this week. We'll see what kind of interest we have, and I'll certainly keep the chair informed.
Thank you.
The clerk has requested to say to you and to everyone from the administration to remind that any official reports being sent to the council, they should be sent to the clerk so that they can be placed in the official record.
Absolutely.
Mr. Sheriff, the number that's in the 2012 budget for this medical program, is it pegged in this budget at 1.8 million, or is it pegged at a lower level and anticipating some savings?
I believe it's at 1.8 million without the anticipated savings because of all the unknowns that we have going into the first of the year.
So that means if we don't get any improvement, we're okay, and if we actually achieve savings, it's a bonus.
Correct.
So that's good. Also, I'd like to get in a little more detail about the overtime. Could you tell me how much money was spent on overtime in 2010, and what the the estimated actual is for 2011 and how much is budgeted for 2012?
Actually, 2000 and let me talk about 2011 first, a year where we had a lot of overtime. To date, we're at about 150,000 hours of overtime, which actually will equate to about $3.5 million. And a lot of that being that we're slow in hiring deputies. Part of that reason, let me get into that real quickly. Part of the reason why we were slow in getting involved in hiring of deputies was when Cleveland laid off their deputies, laid off their police officers, they had about 60 in the police academy. What we did is we slowed our process down. As you may know, we had the majority of our testing was done through Tri-C College. When Cleveland laid off their officers, we then we approached those that were in the academy and said that if you want to take our test, you can, just like any other applicant in the county, you'd have to take the test for it through Tri-C, but we would wait and blend their scores into the scores that we already had for those that had completed the testing process. With that, it slowed us down by about 2 months. So that we could get them tested and brought in. Certainly the upside to that is that they had the police academy that they had just completed. They had a lot of background that had already been certainly done by the city of Cleveland. We would have very little to do with those candidates other than some of the prerequisites that we have for our position as deputy sheriff that is not required by the city of Cleveland. So there was certainly an upside and a downside to it. The downside that it stopped the momentum in getting people hired. With that increased the amount of overtime that we had for issues involving deputy sheriffs. Same thing with protective services. With the number of buildings the increased number of buildings. For example, we have buildings that are closed. Here's what we did to try to reduce the amount of overtime. For example, the buildings that have been closed because of juvenile justice center opening, we have now assigned special deputies to that. Special deputies are not full-time deputy sheriffs. They're the 125 special deputies that we have that go to funerals, that go to parades, that are not paid. We keep their commissions. They go to all of these functions for us representing the sheriff's office. We then assigned these buildings to special deputies so that we could save on the amount of overtime. And of course, though, that comes with issues involving the union, and we're in the process of talking to the union on these issues as well. Also, whenever we, as you know, we have 13 bargaining units and five unions. Whenever we do some things, for example, if we take protective services and put them up in the courtrooms to try to help us out with those issues of security, we, for the most part, always get grievances on these issues where one group believes that another group is taking their work. So we always, when we're trying to address issues of overtime and trying to reduce that number, we have these issues with unions that we get along with and we've had some success with, but at the end of the day, it is issues that we have to address. We're hoping that it. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Can you tell me what the overtime number was for 2010 and what's projected for 2012?
You know what? I don't have the number right here. Meg? Don't have it? It was approximately $3 million for 2011, and we're considerably over that. What is projected in 2012, I don't have that answer, and I'll have to get it to you.
Okay. Could you, any budget-related information, if you could get that to our budget person, Trevor McAleer, and then he'll distribute it to the council.
I will. I apologize for not having that. I should have had that number.
Okay. Could you explain the genesis and the funding for the crime lab, and in particular, To what extent is the funding for the crime lab simply reflecting taking money out of the sheriff's office and moving it into a separate category for the crime lab, and to what extent is it a new expenditure?
Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind, I'll explain the seed money that the Sheriff's Office and the Prosecutor's Office had. It started in 2011, and I believe the Deputy Chief of Staff, Norberto Colon, is going to go into detail on the regional lab. He's got a lot of statistics on that, if you don't mind. But let me explain first the origin of the crime lab. Started approximately 3 years ago, actually, in its infancy stages, and discussed with the medical examiner's office. Last year was the first year that the sheriff's office contributed to the crime lab. We contributed $200,000, and we started taking all of our narcotics cases to the crime lab for analysis on the narcotics on the cases that we had. Prior to that, we had sent those narcotics cases to BCI for analysis. The $200,000 is seed money that we contributed to the regional lab. Came out of our drug forfeiture money. It didn't come out of general fund, but money is money. And I believe another $500,000, I'm not sure about the number, from the prosecutor's office, that was given to the regional lab to start off as seed money for the regional lab. The reasons behind the lab, and I'll let the Deputy Chief of Staff get into the meat and potatoes of it, but a lot of the issues involves the time elements involved, in issues in, for example, in evidentiary DNA, where it takes a great deal of time through the BCI to get DNA analysis, especially if you're looking at issues with multiple suspects involved. To get DNA within a period of time that's really acceptable to investigators is actually now being addressed from BCI. So the reason for the crime lab was to take some of the reasons for the crime lab was to take some of the expertise that the medical examiner's office already has and couple that with some of for example, the people from Cleveland Police Department that are in their latent fingerprint division that'll be transferred to the regional lab if, in fact, the lab comes to fruition. Those people will be transferred to the regional lab for Cuyahoga County's analysis of latent fingerprints. So there's a lot of things, a lot of upside to having our own regional lab in comparison with taking a number of things to BCI for analysis. I think you need to look at where Lake County is at today in their lab, which is an independent lab. It's actually funded through a tax in Lake County. Lake County Lab just has an outstanding reputation throughout law enforcement. It's been in existence for well over 20 years, and it is in an independent lab from their medical examiner's office and from their prosecutor's office. So there's a number of things to say to have in an independent regional lab, and I think Lake County is probably a poster child to that, to having an independent autonomous lab.
Okay. Councilman Germanin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To the sheriff, I'm trying to get an understanding here on the full-time equivalents because it has sailed up. So I guess the first question is, when it went from when your employees went from protective service to your budget, how many people did you inherit?
About 150 from protective services. Now they came over in May of 2010, so we'll actually had the full budget of them in 2011. And then this next budget will also have the additional 10 deputies that are assigned to the impact units. But to answer your question, Councilman, through the chairs, we have 150 additional employees that are in our budget that was not in our budget in the beginning of 2010.
Sheriff, are these employees all deputy sheriffs?
They are not. They are protective services employees that have 120 hours, just the minimum equivalency to carry firearms through the OPATA Training Council. They do not have arrest powers. They have powers to detain, to await a deputy sheriff if, in fact, it's an issue that deserves to be an arresting issue. So they are security officers that actually, since they've come to the sheriff's office, have got a lot more training than they had when they were under central services. So they're not full OPATA sworn officers.
The next question is, I see in the budget here that 70% of your budget is for the jail. So I'm assuming that'd be 70% of the personnel as well. Are all the jailers special deputies?
They are not. They are corrections officers. You may well know that throughout the state of Ohio, there are some sheriff's offices that have their corrections officers are actually deputy sheriffs. And for example, in Summit County, that's the way it works in Summit County. Their corrections are deputy sheriffs. Ours are not. We have an entrance test that they take. It's general knowledge, background check, all of the issues that go along with hiring secure individuals. But then they go through a 3-week training class that we give in our training room to train them to be corrections officers.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay.
Thank you very much.
much.
Appreciate it.
I would point out that the sheriff's office has the largest budget item in the county budget. For that reason, I allowed the sheriff to give long-winded answers. Spending an hour on a $90 million budget is not a bad use of time. However, if we continue at the same pace, we're on a projection to finish at midnight. So I would ask those following not to follow the sheriff's lead and give concise answers. And the next person that we're going to call is our distinguished clerk of courts, Gerald First.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the committee.
Thank you for the distinguished introduction. I think most of you, or I presume all of you, did really read the mission statement, so I won't go over that. It describes the duties of our office, and we went into detail on that when the appointment hearings were had. We worked on our budget very closely with our Deputy Chief of Justice, Noberta Colon, with OBM and with the Executive's Office, and I want to thank them for the consideration they gave us. I want you to know that I personally check each pay period, the payroll, and go over it not just in figures, but in the whys of those figures. I like to stay within budget. I presume that what jumps out at you right away is the decline in the number of FTEs that we have. We have a figure of 236 going down to 158, and that's because our title office is going over to the fiscal officer, and all the people will be on the fiscal officer's payroll. In addition to that, our HR people will be transferred, salary-wise at least, to Elise Harris' budget. So that's basically the reason for it. I'd like to point out, too, that our legal section is down, at this point, 15 people. This is through natural attrition, people resigning, retiring, and But this budget does provide for replacing some of these people. We only recently received clearage to post these jobs, and we did our first posting 2 weeks ago. And any posting we do down the line will be done within budget. Tomorrow afternoon and Wednesday, I'll be going to Columbus in connection with the Ohio Clerk of Courts Association. I've been pretty active in that group. And I mention that because county clerks and other county offices are hurting budget-wise. And you can hear it and you can feel it. So what we're focusing on in Columbus is revenue generation. What can we do to generate more revenues? Among those ideas are two main ones: the electronic lien state judgments. We've been helped by former Attorney General Richard Cordray, and that's continued under Mike DeWine as Attorney General. What they will do is collect not only the amount due, but collect fees that are due the county clerks and remit them to us. Some of these fees just don't get to us. People neglect to take it off the books here, and we don't get the money for it. This way, we'll be guaranteed that money. We're looking at 2 court cost collections. That's a big thing for all counties, and they all have the same difficulties, particularly with regard to criminal costs. And there is a task force in Cuyahoga County that's being established, and we will work closely with them. I'm gathering material and anything I can to help with the collection to better it. A third thing that we're working on, which is not connected with Columbus, is to increase the security deposits for civil cases that are filed. It's lower. This has nothing to do with the cost. The costs are set statewide by the legislature, but the security deposits are fixed locally by the judges. And this would help us because as costs go up and the security deposit stays at the same level, we don't collect money that we should collect. It's not there for us to capture because the law allows us, even if a defendant doesn't pay the cost, if he's assessed the cost, we can still take the security deposit posted by the plaintiff. We will continue to bill the defendant, and if we collect it, we'll get the money back to the plaintiff. But it's there. But we need more to ensure that we do collect close to the amount that we should collect. One of the things, too, that's concerned us, and I hate to get into this issue, but it's Senate Bill 5, because that's a major issue, and concern about that is that at least we've been told this by legal counsel down there, that the governor's budget has been predicated on the passage of that law, maintenance of that law, and that if it fails, his budget will be $1.5 billion short, which means to maintain a balanced budget, he'll have to make that up by making cuts to schools, cuts to the local government fund. And in reading the HANA reports, which I read every day, I saw that in the state of Nebraska, they totally eliminated the local government fund. If that happened, it would really hurt us here. So we're concerned. After I heard that, I said, it looks like a lose-lose, no matter which way it goes. If it passes, our people could be hurt by it, and if it loses, the county revenues could be hurt by it. So that's how it is. So that's why we're focusing on revenues, not just because they should be collected, but because we need them. I'd like to mention one other thing. I'm glad you're here, Sonny. And Ellen Connolly, you're concerned particularly, I know you're all concerned, but with all those boxes that have been piling up in our basement. Well, the Title Bureau, which is operates at 1261 Superior Avenue, is a county-owned building. And now the Title Bureau operates on the first floor. The second floor is run by the fiscal officers, county recorders section. And they're doing microfilming and scanning up there. We've had boxes and boxes of files that are gone to decree piling up in our archives department. We had a special office at, not an office, but a building off of West 3rd Street, which the county owned and allowed us to put these, the spillover of those boxes there. Unfortunately, we ran out of space there. It became crowded, so we had no place to move them since June. So since June, the boxes have been piling up and piling up. Well, this last Wednesday, we made a delivery of 200 boxes from our storage department on West 3rd Street to the Title Bureau office. They'll be working on them on the second floor. Now we can move some of those boxes, replace some of those boxes from our basement. But I went down there and talked to the folks, and I said, is this going to make a dent? They said, well, if you make about 6 more deliveries of 200 boxes, you'll see some evidence of it. But we're moving in the right direction in on that matter. So anyway, that's about the conclusion of my remarks. Do you have any questions? Be well.
Okay, I'd like to note that Councilwoman Simon has joined our committee, and the questioning will begin with Councilman Gallagher, followed by Greenspan.
Yeah.
Hi, Mr. First. Now, you don't have any personnel dedicated to the collection of court costs?
Well, we do.
We do.
Yeah, I mean, we do. We collect inmate collections, one of our big things. That's done through our office. We bill and we bill, but we don't have a collection agent. We used to have a collection agent. They quit on us. We went through all the steps, but because it wasn't economically feasible. And one of the things that hurt them was the fact that we could not provide them Social Security numbers. We wrote to the prosecutor twice, and he said, no, you can't use them. Now, I'm hearing through Columbus that some of the clerks have found a way around that. And if that's the case, it'll be a big help.
It'll be a court order, I would imagine.
We also have money collected by the probation department, and that comes to us too.
How many
That's
employees?
in-house.
How many employees do you have collecting?
Well, in the criminal branch, well, all of our cashiers collect. That's part of their job. I mean, they collect fees that are owed, court costs, and anything else that comes through the window. We have a person dedicated to the inmate collection, too.
That one I'm not too concerned with because it is criminal and that's a difficult road to hoe. I'm more looking at the numbers that we got from probate, which is a little bit lower. The civil court costs, which are astronomical from 2002, and the appeals court, which is not that much. But so let's concentrate on the civil court costs, which are, give or take $15 million from 2002. If we're looking for money, there's the money. I mean, this is owed money. In those cases, those are folks that came to the court on their own volition to get a judgment. They walk away with the judgment. They don't pay their court costs. And it's just confusing to me on how that happens.
You're right, totally right.
What are they doing in Columbus? You mentioned something about Columbus.
We've had seminars with different clerks on it, how they've approached it, and what tactics they've used and what's worked for them. And I'm gathering as much information as I can to provide for the task force when it gets underway.
But what the problem I see here is this just going back to 2002, and these are big numbers, and I'm concerned that we weren't addressing the problem going back 9 years. And, you know, with the budget that we have, every dollar is important, obviously. And these are substantial dollars that, you know, we had Judge First in last week looking for $500,000, and she wasn't all that happy with me when I told her that, you know, the budget's the budget. We just don't have any money.
That's it.
And then I come to realize that, you know, I'm looking at a $15 million windfall. How do we get that money?
You're right. I agree. We want to address it.
Okay. Thank you.
Council, okay. Any, I have one question, which is regarding the hundreds of boxes. Do we have any long-term plan to get these converted to some kind of electronic storage?
Well, they're archivable, so whatever we do, we've always shipped them to the mine so that they could be there forever, because we have to keep the records forever. So, however they're done, they have to be archivable.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, the answer is yes. Actually, what the clerk is stating is that they are currently being put in a digital format. The issue was through the move with the fiscal staff that actually does the scanning, they moved to a new location. And during that move, the boxes just kept piling up. And so whereas, you know, the first part of your question is, absolutely, we want to digitize everything that he has, the hundreds of boxes, digitize them across the board. That includes the courts as well. And so we're just going to constantly have to keep up with the pace of those files that need to be digitized. But in addition to that, that doesn't solve all of our problems, because we're always going to have a lag. Unless you have hundreds of people scanning these things in and digitizing them, we still are looking at how do we address the proper storage of these files and the proper storage of, within a location that the clerk and his staff can walk to retrieve them. So they are being digitized today.
And after they're digitized, are we able to dispose of them, of the paper files?
Yes. And as far as specifically how the clerk and how the courts do that, I'd leave it up to them to answer.
We check the film, Dale, and after we're satisfied that it's accurate, then we give the green light to destroy the files.
Okay. Ms. Simon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To the clerk, thank you. Good to see you, Mr. First. The question that I want to follow up with these boxes, and it's a mess. You know, it's been a mess, and I'm glad we are at least making efforts to clean it up. But I see that the clerks in the basement, are they still using like a microfiche machine in one of those rooms? Is that
could be.
Pardon me?
It could be. Are you talking the microfilm room or the archives?
The microfilm room.
Yeah. Well, they do limit it, and they have planetary, cameras to. Yeah.
I don't mean to interrupt. Okay. Keith Hurley, I'm sorry. We have to keep it on microfilm.
Right.
We're required to keep it on microfilm.
That's what I'm told.
Right.
So there's only one machine in that room, though, that operates to microfilm. Is that correct? One machine that works?
I think we're having some issues with the equipment that we do have, but yeah. So, there's more than one, I believe.
Is there something in the budget to upgrade and work on these to make sure?
We're looking at getting them, the ones that I think might be two machines there, one repaired.
Correct.
Has to be
because it's slowing down things, I think. Yeah. As fast as this side has to move to get boxes someplace, that room needs to be, I think, moving faster.
And we're looking at
is there something
the repairs
in this budget?
Well, our budget would cover that, yes.
It does, to repair and upgrade?
Yes.
What's the timetable for that?
Well, hopefully as soon as we get the approval on signing off. There's a process between the company that does the repair and us signing off on the approval of that.
Okay.
Yeah, so hopefully soon.
because in Justice Affairs, I'm probably going to have you back, or Mr. First back at the end of the year to see what the progress is, A, on boxes, and B, on this process downstairs.
Perfect.
And this is statutory that they have to put in a microfilm?
Right,
Where's
it's
the-
archivable, yeah, that's the
That's
only-
part of the
that's-
archives process.
correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Judge Connolly knows more about that, but okay. So-
There was a time when we did microfilming in-house, but at one time we had 35 people doing it. So we're down to about 3 or 4. And we wouldn't, even if we had 35, we wouldn't have the room for them. But the microfilm department, one of their biggest thing is giving out copies of the records and collecting the fees for the copies. And also, our chief there is the guy that reads the films. He's got good eyes.
Okay, Council President Connolly, followed by Councilman Jones.
Good afternoon, Mr. First. I just want to come back to what Mr. Gallagher was talking about. I'm on this task force set up by the county executive about money that's owed to the county, and I'm looking at this domestic relations that from 2002 we still have outstanding court costs of almost $250,000. Now it seems to me that if you haven't paid your court costs, you shouldn't get your journal entries. So I don't understand why, and I don't want to spend too much time on this afternoon, but it seems to me this is a tremendous amount of money that people come into court, they settle up their cases, they get their money, and I mean, like I said, when you go in and you want your certified copy of your divorce decree to get married again, you shouldn't get that certified copy until your fees are paid. I mean, people are getting money as a result of these lawsuits, one side or the other, and these figures are really unacceptable. I mean, from 2002 on the civil docket, you still got $738,000. So I'm going to work with Mr. Hurley and I know the people in the task force and Mr. Steen and I, we're willing to work with it because this is money just sitting out there. And I know criminal is a lot tougher, but in the Court of Appeals, I don't understand how you don't collect this money. I mean, 2002, somebody had an appeal and you stole $94,000 in cost here. Why aren't these costs collected?
Well, first of all, domestic relations, they did raise their filing fee.
Yeah, but that doesn't make, I mean, with all due respect, Mr. First, you got money from 2002, $250,000 sitting here you never collected.
Those cases are probably pending, still pending.
Some might still, maybe not from 2002. But you have to remember too that, just as an example, in the Court of Appeals, a lot of those are inmate appeals. And it's difficult to collect from inmates. I mean, that's something that we deal with every day. And a lot of the ones that would still be owed would include, like in domestic relations, poverty affidavits were filed by the parties. So we still send bills for those, but if because the poverty affidavit or the affidavit of indigence that's filed with a new action, it just lets them avoid the deposit, but we still bill on it. But in many instances, they don't have any money to respond, or they're filed by the legal aid department, with the poverty affidavit. But we do bill.
All right, well, I mean, we've got a lot of other people on the agenda, and I don't want to take more time, and I'm willing to meet with you about it. But
we're anxious to work with the task force to come up with some solutions. And you mentioned the divorce decree. I believe there might be a clerk's office that I recently heard does that. They wouldn't give a copy. I don't know how. I'm not exactly sure the legal ramifications of not providing a copy when it's requested.
Well, let them sue us. I mean, you want your divorce decree, pay us our money. I mean, it seems to me there's some things here that you can do that can cause people to pay up, particularly things like domestic relations and civil cases.
One of the things, too, that we did, Judge Connolly, was we found this out through the Clerks Association to a small county. If a person didn't pay their court costs, existing court costs, and they came in with a post-decree motion, the court, as a result of this, put an order on that we would not, our clerks could not accept the post-decree motion until any existing court costs were paid, and that's helped us a lot.
Yeah, okay, all right, thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Okay, we have Councilman Jones and then Ms. Simon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And my colleague, Councilman Gallagher and Council President, asked my questions.
Yes.
So there are millions, as they've expressed, millions of dollars of old court costs.
Yes.
Can you qualify? You mentioned that some of them are inmates, and can you qualify those millions? What percentage would you say are collectible dollars that we can actively pursue?
Well, the inmates we do collect from, and we were a pioneer in that field. In fact, we had collected something like $260 million before Summit County even collected their first nickel. Okay, so we're way out ahead on that one. Now, as far as people, there are people who serve their time, they get out of prison, and they just disappear. You never collect from them. And that happens. It's a fact of life.
Mr. Chair, to Councilman Jones, relative to trying to quantify, and you were talking, I think, relative to like domestic relations or the Court of Appeals. I mean, it's something we could look at and see if we can figure that out. You know, we can try to address that, see if there's a way to quantify. I wouldn't know the percentage in say the Court of Appeals, how many are filed by inmates, how many appeal actions, but I know a lot of them are.
Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Simon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To the clerk, I'll be very brief, but the domestic relations action you put in place to prohibit post-decree filings has been extremely effective in terms of disallowing post-decree motions. It's really brought in money. Have you thought about some kind of working off-court fees, like community service for these people? And I know we would need, not these people, but people who haven't paid their court costs. That might be, are other clerks' offices doing that?
Not that I've heard of, but it's an interesting thing if it could become a reality.
Yeah, I know you'd probably have to hire your own unit to oversee that or work with the sheriff, but maybe that's something to look down the road for people who can't actually pay. They might be able to perform some community service to benefit the county. Just a thought.
Okay. Other questions? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, we have our medical examiner, Dr. Thomas Gilson.
Thank you, Mr.
Welcome
Chairman.
to the committee.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairman and members of Council. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you this afternoon. This marks the first budget from the medical examiner system in Cuyahoga County and the first attempt to present a biennial budget. This presented some unique challenges to the office. The business of investigating deaths is very fluid, and trying to determine future needs and the volume of work from year to year is highly variable. For instance, homicides, which represent probably the most complicated cases that we investigate, have shown a serious fluctuation over the last 5 years, rising to as high as 174 in 2007 to as low as 98 in 2010. So for the next 2 years, we've tried our best to anticipate what in some ways isn't always predictable. Taking into account the various changes to the county government over the past year, the Cuyahoga County Medical Examiner's Office is presenting a biennial budget of $10.4 million for 2012 and $10.33 million for 2013. And this is down from our projected budget of $11.8 million in 2011. Some of this reflects reductions in staffing, which were carried out in May of 2011, just prior to my arrival to the Medical Examiner's Office. Others reflect cost controls, which I've implemented since my arrival. And also some of this is attributable to restructuring of the staff internally and some of the cooperation we've had with outside departments, including public safety and justice regarding information technology and human resources with the centralization of human resources personnel formerly in our office. I would mention the Medical Examiner's Laboratory Fund. This is a statutory requirement that was used to provide funds for the needs and improvements to the Medical Examiner's laboratories and autopsy and morgue function. It is largely funded by autopsy services that we provide to outside counties. In rectifying some budget issues from the previous administration, this fund has been nearly completely depleted. It is our intention to restructure some of our internal budgeting to replenish this fund as soon as possible. The work done at the Cuyahoga County Medical Examiner's Office and the Cuyahoga County Regional Forensic Science Laboratory is highly scientific in nature, and we are fortunate to have resources such as this in our area. Many parts of the United States do not have access to such facilities and expertise. It is important to note, as I mentioned earlier, the Cuyahoga County Medical Examiner's Office and the Crime Lab provide services not only to our own county, but to those of Northeast Ohio as well. Investigating sudden and unexpected suspicious deaths of our citizens is the mandated service that we provide. However, these services do not always come cheaply. The Medical Examiner's general operating budget is about $7.4 million. This includes staffing costs for specialized staff such as forensic pathologists like myself, scientists and investigators, and we also have our more generalized office staff. Currently, 50 staff are included in this portion of our budget. It includes the general administrative needs of the office and the Samuel Gerber building where the medical examiner's office now resides. It is a self-sustained and state-of-the-art facility requiring specialized equipment to conduct autopsies and serve the annual flow of over 1,200 cases which are awaiting their final resting spot coming through our office. We have completed our organization restructuring with few exceptions and now have restored a sense of leadership and administrative order to move forward with the new challenges and goals. Topping that list of goals that I have for the agency is accreditation by the National Association of Medical Examiners, which I would like to achieve in the next calendar year. We've also worked internally to reduce turnaround times to improve service to the community, reducing these in all facets of our operations, and have had some success so far and can continue to move forward for constant improvement in the upcoming year. Within the medical examiner's office, the Cuyahoga County Regional Forensic Science Laboratory, or the Crime Lab, includes an additional 30 staff of highly trained scientists, chemists, and other forensic experts. This budget is currently approximately $2 million, and the scientific equipment required for this phase of our operation is even more sophisticated and sensitive than our general operations. This area of the laboratory encompasses our toxicology and drug chemistry laboratories, our DNA laboratory, and the trace evidence unit. The Crime Lab will also be seeking additional accreditations in the upcoming year, having recently achieved ASCLAD, or the Association of Crime Lab Directors accreditation, just this last month. The primary goal that we're trying to do with the Crime Lab is swift and accurate provision of information for the dispensation of justice. Providing scientific evidence is crucial to do, and the CC and the Cuyahoga County Medical Examiner's Office provides a highly accredited foundation under the existing laboratories of the medical examiner and will bring quality and oversight by year's end. It is anticipated that the Cuyahoga County Medical Examiner's Office will house the most highly accredited public crime laboratory in the United States. In closing, my first 6 months in Cuyahoga County have been busy and fulfilling, but I look forward to 2012 as a year first of my own year to put my own stamp on some things and really shore up the reputation of this office and restore it to its national prominence. I asked my administrator, Hugh Shannon, to provide some of the more detailed numbers of our budget, and then I'd be happy to answer any questions you have. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, members of council, just some quick divisions and numbers to go over. As Dr. Gilson mentioned, the medical examiner's budget is basically now split between our general operations and the crime lab. Prior to this, there was a somewhat complex mix of different funds, and it caused a lot of confusion, I think, in making budget appropriations and adjustments from one fund to the next to make sure that they were covering all of their costs. So we've worked very hard, and I'd like to thank our folks at OBM, Maggie and Chuck, and over at Justice, Felicia Harrison, and her staff, who have now kind of taken over those duties for us, and trying to come up with a more simplified and straightforward way to track what our expenditures are, so that people who work in the crime lab post to the crime lab that the contracts and commodities that are purchased for the crime lab are expensed to the crime lab and not this kind of back and forth. I think we'll be able to keep a better and more tightly controlled those expenditures and know what it is that we're actually spending on. The general fund of the operations is about $7.4 million, and then the medical examiner's lab actually has a special account. It's mandated by law, and it gets replenished by what Dr. Gilson said, mainly the outside county autopsies. We will do autopsies for other medical examiners and coroners' operations from about 10 or 12 surrounding counties in Northeast Ohio. Right now, we're charging about $1,200 for those outside autopsies, we do about 200 to 300 a year. So that money is supposed to go into this fund. It is supposed to be set aside to specifically address any technical equipment, et cetera, issues that we have with the medical examiner's labs. And that, for a variety of reasons, has been depleted this year. So we're hoping with these new cost controls and with this more straightforward and simplified budgeting to be able to address this specific shortfall and get that lab fund replenished in a relatively short period of time. The other thing I wanted to mention is we're dropping about $1.4 million from our projections this year. Some of that's due to the reductions in staff that we had mid-year this year. Apparently those were supposed to take place at the end of last year, so we picked up about 6 months worth of expenses that I don't think were originally anticipated for. We're also shifting the IT staff over to public safety and justice services, so that will account for some of the reduction in the overall numbers. We had about 95 FTEs through the end of 2010 and the beginning of this year. By year's end, actually at the current level, we're down to 80. We'll probably be down around 75 to start 2012. So those adjustments have been made. In 2010, personnel and personnel costs, associated costs, took up about 60% of the budget. Next year, we're looking at about 45%, which is a little unusual. Most, and as you most know, anybody who's dealt with public budgets, it's usually at least 50% or more is all personnel. Because of the scientific nature of the work that is done here, we have an inordinate amount of costs that are not personnel related. Scientific equipment, our accreditations, they require us to do a lot of testing throughout the year. So there are special tests that we need to run, so we need to buy supplies to run those tests and send the results to our accreditors so that they know that the work we're doing is scientifically valid. So we actually do quite a bit of purchasing for those scientific tests, and of course all of the tests that the labs normally run. Some of the commodities that we need to purchase are rather expensive. So we've reduced that down to about 45% for next year. The last piece that I wanted to mention is with respect to the crime lab, I know that you had asked some questions to the sheriff. I know that Deputy Chief Colon is going to address some more of your specific requests. We do have, and we have had a nice partnership with the sheriff's office and the prosecutor's office. Each of those offices gave $200,000 in seed money last year. The city of Cleveland also forwarded about $50,000 worth of some of their grant funds as seed money to get this up and running. The prosecutor's office has also provided part of the Gruda-Doria settlement funds to do the final build-out and equipment purchases. It's about $4 million. What we need to do is be able to capitalize on that and leverage those funds so that we can provide these services not only to the sheriff's office, the City of Cleveland Police Department, but all the suburban communities, and possibly going into the future, some of the surrounding counties to take some of the burden off of the state and BCI. Part of the reason that the crime lab is such a popular idea here is that BCI's turnaround times lag months and months and months. It jeopardizes prosecutions and the caseloads start to back up. If we can turn them around faster for these local communities and keep it at a reasonable cost, we already subsidize about $2 million in expenses for the existing labs. Then they'll be able to turn their cases around. They'll be able to get their officers back on new cases quicker. So That's all I have.
Okay, Mr. Shannon, one question. The increase in the all funds expenditure from 1.983 million in 2011 to 2.963 million, just about $1 million. Does that represent primarily the moving of costs from the medical examiner's budget into the crime lab?
To some extent, yes, sir. Yes.
What else does it reflect?
Again, we talked about simplifying the budgets and making sure that things were posting properly to each of the funds. The general fund of the medical examiner's office is one fund. The medical examiner's laboratory fund is a second, and then the crime lab is the third. There was a fourth fund, and not everything was posting to the right place. So in the course of making those adjustments so that they properly post, there was some movement there as well.
Okay, questions by my colleagues? Councilman Germana.
Mr. Chairman, just a brief comment. I just wanted to thank the medical examiner, Mr. Shannon. I think the tour that you gave county council members really helps us understand and appreciate what you do down there, especially the scientific caliber of what you accomplish. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Sir, if I could just comment briefly. Thank you very much for coming down. I would also like to extend the invitation. I think I emailed a couple of you. If you didn't have an opportunity to come then, we'd be very happy to schedule something else if you can make it at a later time. I do think coming there is beneficial. I'll try not to be long-winded, but I think it gives you a much better understanding of our operation than we can.
Okay. Councilman Jones.
And just one brief question. I know Lake County applied for a federal grant, see roughly $95,000. Have we applied for any federal grant dollars to support our crime lab?
We are, and we explore all of our federal options, also trying to explore state support for our crime laboratory in particular. Not sure where that'll go. And then the other things, obviously, lines of funding would be through Cleveland, as we would potentially absorb crime lab functions from their county and then from the municipalities outside of Cleveland as well. We are exploring everything we can to fund the crime lab and make it a winning situation. Did you want to add anything?
Yes. Currently, we are operating with about the open grants that we have, federal grants that we have right now, total about $760,000. Mostly in DNA backlog and National Coverdale grants, but we also have some port security funds and some urban area security initiative funds to do mass disaster planning and training. We also are getting a mobile morgue and emergency response equipment trailer to be able to respond to any mass fatality event that might take place in Cuyahoga County or actually in the region. And we'll be coordinating with emergency management in the coming year to do an exercise on mass fatality to put that put our folks through the paces with that new equipment.
Okay, Ms. Conwell.
Through the chair to the medical examiner, during your confirmation hearing, did you talk something about accreditation that would make this medical examiner's office? I might be confusing you.
I'm ready to pick up the question. Yes, I did.
Okay.
I think that, one of the things I mentioned in my confirmation hearing was the desire to have the office accredited by what I mentioned as a top priority, the National Association of Medical Examiners. That's a blanket over the whole agency. There are individual areas of accreditation with specific to certain laboratories. I'm also pursuing or encouraging the laboratory directors to pursue. I think the reason we need to do this is multifold. One, I think it proves that we do good work. Second, I think it does restore the reputation of the agency, which I don't think is any secret. It went through some hard times. Lastly, I really think that this is the wave of the future. Already in New York and Texas, they're starting to require some of these accreditations for the admissibility of evidence in court. I'd rather be on the front of that curve than on the back trying to play catch up. We already have our laboratory accredited. If we were to add things to it, additional crime lab functions, we would have to go through that process of addition. But we need to prove that we're doing that kind of work, because I think if we don't get ahead of the curve, somebody will impose, requirements on us that we haven't driven. So I'd rather be ahead of the curve and get our accreditations so that we can prove we're doing good work and anticipate what's going to be, I think, the next trend in forensic science, which is proving you do good work.
I was just wondering if, with the accreditation, would that allow us to possibly receive more grant funding and things of that nature?
That same legislation in New York, Ohio, and a couple of other states, I believe Oklahoma is another one, also for those states to accept federal grant funding, they're requiring that of those, offices that are applying for federal grant funds. We're not there, but I'd rather, as I say, be ahead of the curve with that in case we do implement something like that. And I do think that's a national trend.
Okay. Any others? Okay.
Thank you
very
very
much.
Thanks.
We're going to do one or two more before taking a break. Next on our agenda is Public Safety and Justice Services, to be presented by Norberto Colon.
Good afternoon. Roberto Colon, Deputy Chief of Staff. I'd like to start off by at least recognizing some of my staff that are here and that's actually at least attempted to make me get a better understanding of this grant process here within the county. Been doing large multi-million-dollar budgets for the last 10 years. However, this one has appeared to be a little bit more challenging for me. But I think I finally got the hang of it. But with me today I have Valerie Proper, who's my Assistant Deputy Chief. I also have Felicia and Nancy, who are my fiscal folks sitting in the back, if you can wave. And I'd like to also thank the OBM folks who really helped me get a clear understanding of this budget. I'd like to address, before I get too deep, really the medical examiner, more specifically the issue related to the regional crime lab. As the sheriff and the medical examiner had mentioned, over last year they've put up some seed money, really with the attempt of, and I was in those discussions representing the city of Cleveland at the time, really with the assumption that, you know what, enough is enough. We've been talking about a regional crime lab for a while. Let's just at least do something within 2010 and part of 2011 to at least get the ball moving. The executive in running obviously has been very clear that this is one of his priority areas. And so over the last year, I've really been digging deep into figuring out what level, what do we need to do? The crime lab exists today. What we need to work on is the regional part of it. And so right now, the folks that are working out of there are really just the drug folks. And so we're working on with the executive right now what we believe, and this budget does not, nor does the medical examiner's budget today, have what we believe may be the cost to actually make the medical examiner and the crime lab be open to everyone. And so we're working on that in the upcoming days to really try to figure out what that exact dollar amount is to make drug and DNA, forensics, and all those other things available. So you probably will see whatever we believe is an appropriate dollar amount presented sometime prior to the end of this budget book. And so that is one of those areas that we truly want to support and believe it's a benefit to the region. Back onto my budget. When I first took this position in February, I knew that it would kind of be two-tier. I kind of was looking forward to those roles and responsibilities related to the Deputy Chief of Staff, especially some of the larger areas that are more strategic, like crime lab, the medical issues related to the jail, et cetera. I was even more excited to take on the challenges of reorganizing those different areas under Justice Affairs. And so, especially noting that, within this tough economic climate, we need to make some changes there, but also knowing that we could do better in every area within Justice Affairs. And so as you remember there a few weeks or a few months back, one of my first tasks were to decide what are those areas that really should remain under the centralized areas, or whether we could take these offices and move them to different sections. And obviously, with the passage and creating the Department of Public Safety and Justice Services, we kind of felt that in moving forward, we needed to keep all the areas under the department. Some of the 3 changes that were made in that new creation of the department was we removed the Justice Planning Group, which is just a small office of 2. They are now under the Administrative Division. We joined the Criminal Justice Agency, Service Agency, which handled mostly the Department of Justice grants. We merged that with the public safety grants that did Homeland Security grants, so now there's just one grant office. And we also developed the Division of Public Safety IT, which I'll talk a little bit more in a few minutes. In my effort to really increase the fiscal efficiency within the county, I felt that it was my responsibility within this new department to do more with less. As a result, I went forward with the focus to not only cut the budget, but to reprogram various areas in the department while still maintaining the same financial stability. Again, I felt that there was many areas within the justice services area that could have done better or could do more. And so within this budget, I wanted to make sure that I did that within the same budgetary constraints. Since the beginning of this position, I've done really the following within the 2011 projected budget. I reorganized emergency management. And so we did that within the same budgetary constraints that existed. However, we were able to include, we did some layoffs. We were also able to hire 2 additional staff members with experience in their particular area. In this case, in outreach and training and in planning. And so we also have a posting open right now, and we'll be selecting an experienced emergency management administrator to really run the office. We came here with one focus, and that's to be the best emergency management agency within the state of Ohio. We're the largest, and there's no reason why that goal shouldn't be obtained. And so we were able to do a lot of reorganization there, again, within the purviews of the existing budget. We also moved forward with this assumption that we've been doing a disservice to our residents over the last several years by sitting on what is 911 funding. And so the use of that funding is clear. It's for the betterment of all 911 systems within Cuyahoga County. It is our responsibility to move forward with that. So we have started a 911 study and are bracing to upgrade everybody's hardware. That study currently is expected to be completed within the next several weeks. And within that study, we will be able to move forward with a plan on how to get everyone onto current 911 technologies. There's 47 911 centers in the Cuyahoga County. And so we're hope to at least get 47 of them upgraded. If not, maybe a lower number because there'll be some regionalization within these 911 centers. We also are currently working on a strategic plan that's almost finalized for the renaming, rebranding, and reorganization of the CRIS system. Our information sharing amongst law enforcement, amongst all criminal justice partners, hasn't been what it should have been over the last 20 years. It started in 1980, and over the last 10 years especially, we've seen a decline in some of our customers. I am fully confident that you're going to see a brand new day for the CRIS system and a brand new day as it relates to information sharing across all of the criminal justice. And again, you will see what that specifically means in the next coming weeks as it relates to border control as we look to spend some funding here shortly. We consolidated the IT department. And so within this, I'll talk about that actually within this budget. But one of the things I want to specifically mention is doing more with less is Felicia and Nancy, the fiscal folks that work for me, also are the fiscal officers for the medical examiner. And so earlier in the year, in determining how we can really get the medical examiner's budget down, we saw that he didn't maybe had the need for a full-time fiscal officer, and I had a pretty good staff on the justice side, so they also do the fiscal for them. What we've achieved doing more with less in 2011, the 2012 budget may appear as a contradiction to my focus and mission of fiscal responsibility within the department. However, that is not the case. So if we can go through within the budget, it may appear on page 26. I'm sorry, that's medical examiner. I am on page 40. It may appear that within the first line, the general fund, you're going to see an increase on the general fund line of $643,000. That's a result of moving the IT folks. We are moving the sheriff, the public safety IT folks all under one, the Division of Public Safety IT. That's 7 from the sheriff's office, 3 for the medical examiners, and 3 that were formerly under my admin budget. So that's just a move over. We believe that throughout 2012 and beyond, we will begin to see what those efficiencies are. And so there's a lot of unknown, but we do believe that by consolidating those IT, that you may be able to see some layoffs throughout the process, throughout 2012. We can't speak specifically to where that will be. It's too early right now. We also believe that you'll see some efficiencies as it relates to some of the software. In 2013, again, there may even be more efficiencies as it relates to public safety IT once we figure out what the relationship should be with the Chief Information Officer and his staff. This is just more of a phase one in our hope to create a more robust public safety IT structure. In the other funds line item, at first glance, comparing 2011 to 2012, it may appear that we have an increase in $3.5 million. And so I'd like to explain that. The easiest way to explain that is to start off with 2013, actually. I think 2013's other funds is more of an appropriate, more of an accurate cost of what our annual other funds budget is. The reason that 2012 is higher is for two reasons. 2012 has an increase of $5 million that's coming from the wireless 911 surplus. As I said a few minutes ago, it's really time to really upgrade 911 dollars. And so we're planning on rolling at least $5 million of that 911 dollars out to the first responder communities. At first glance, I can tell you right now, if we upgraded everyone's 911 equipment in Cuyahoga County, it'd be somewhere around $10 million. This $5 million is the first step in doing that, and that's why you'll see this increase in 2012. And the rest, the remaining balance difference, $250,000-ish, is a result of ERIP and a couple of the closeouts for areas that were under under our area that are no longer our area. And so again, at first glance, it appears that maybe we're over in those two particular areas, but we are, as you look at these numbers, we are operating at the same level as we previously have, however, providing more and better service to not only our constituents, but also the first responder community. I'm willing and able to answer any questions you may have.
Questions by my colleagues? Councilman Rogers and then Councilwoman Conwell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit about what goes into the 911 upgrade. Is that primarily equipment, or is there additional training that goes with that? And is that the sole charge of your department, or, you know, since we're working with various, you said 47 different 911
Correct.
centers throughout the county, or what responsibility do they have in this upgrade, or just how does
Sure.
it work?
Sure. So I could specifically, so this fund, just so we're all clear, obviously is 28 cents per billable phone number. It's about $3.3 million that come in a year into Cuyahoga County. All of 911 services countywide. So that's the operation. That's the number of, they're called PSAPs or dispatch centers, 47. How they answer the calls, how the calls are forwarded, do they have backups, are the responsibility of the 911 board as written in Ohio Revised Code. That 911 board is 5 members: Cuyahoga County, the City of Cleveland, Parma, Mayors and Managers Association, and Townships and Trustees Association. And so they have the ultimate responsibility in how these funds are dished out. More than these funds, they also have the responsibility of how 911 is handled countywide. And so right now, so any changes throughout the system as a whole would need to be voted on by the 911 board.
So, Mr. Chairman, so your department would have, the county would have the responsibility for developing an RFP or anything for any type of equipment upgrades for the system countywide?
Through the chairman to the councilman, yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't answer that question. So the county's responsibility obviously is we're the lead, and the Ohio Revised Code does dictate that the county is the chair of the 911 board. We also have the fiscal responsibilities because the funds do come into our coffers here. Yeah, so most of the equipment clearly will be spent on equipment. The anti-alley controllers is the bulk of it. Mm-hmm. And so those are the calls that tell you the phone number, the address, and now obviously the lat and the long if you're calling from a cell phone. So the bulk of the money will be placed on the actual purchase of that hardware. There'll also be some, in some cases, some telephones. 911 telephone systems are different than the average telephone systems that are in normal buildings. You'll see some professional services, most likely for implementation and project management.
And again, I believe you said that there was a $9 million surplus from this fund?
We're projected to be at the end of this year, a $10 million surplus at the end of this year.
Okay.
Of that $10 million, we're in this budget right now, there's $5 million of it to spend. Okay. Obviously, depending on how the implementation goes, we will have to dip into some additional surplus. If it's needed next year, it would be through councils, through appropriation. Mm-hmm. If it's, I would suspect actually, since it's a 2-year budget, that we would probably have to do an appropriation sometime in the future.
And if the surcharge were to not be renewed, what then happens?
Okay, that's a good question through the chairman of the council member. I like to think of it more of what if it does get renewed, because many good things could happen. I think right now we are going in with the mindset of we have enough money, but we're going to cut it close to upgrade everybody's 911 in Cuyahoga County. We're going to cut it pretty close. And so if the reauthorization didn't happen, we would just stop there and not really address some of the other major concerns moving forward, such as continued regionalization as it relates to these dispatch centers, continued training as it relates to dispatch centers, especially in areas related to medical response, interoperability as it relates to the radio system. And so there's a lot of good things that those dollars can do. And since we're a little bit behind the curve, we're just going to really use these dollars to get us really to the baseline on where we should be.
Thank you.
Councilman Rogers followed my line of questioning, so I don't have any.
Ms. Simon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Clown. With regard to the mediation staffing, I see in your notes that if the juvenile court ADR department doesn't receive additional funding through this budgetary process, that perhaps your mediation department may have to be cut. Am I reading that correctly? And if so, what's the level of mediation employees to what it might have to be reduced to?
Through the chairman of the councilwoman, I think that's one part-time that would need to be cut. However, we are currently working on this budget to make sure that does not happen. We're looking with the goal of keeping obviously a balanced budget and staying within the parameters of this existing proposed budget. We're looking at ways to make sure that doesn't happen, and so we hope to address that in the next couple weeks in the form of a change that we would submit to this council.
So, Mr. Chair, Mr. Clone, how much additional budget do you know that the juvenile court's requesting for ADR and mediation? Do you?
Through the chairman of the councilwoman, I don't know off the top of my head. I'll look behind me, see if Valerie knows, but it's low. I think it's 40. 75? I think. Is Maggie? What it is? 150,000.
About how much?
150,000.
150. Okay. And this part-time mediator, what function does this part-time mediator serve, if you know, that might be in jeopardy?
Through the chairman of the councilwoman, I do not know. I will get back to you on that. Yeah, I don't want to. I kind of have an assumption, but let me get back to you.
But that would be a part-time mediator performing duties at juvenile court, if you know? Or
I would assume so, but I'll make sure that I have that in the answer to you specifically.
Thank you.
So to follow up on that line, do I understand correctly that unless some additional money is put into either this budget or the juvenile court budget, that we would probably not be able to maintain the current level of services on mediation? Is that correct?
That's correct, although I would clearly state that I don't believe that we will get to that point, but yes.
Okay, well, we don't want to get to that point. Councilman Greenspan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You say you don't believe we'll get to that point. What's the basis for that opinion?
Through the chairman, I think we're looking at, I have the task and responsibilities to really look within the budget and see if I can make some recommendations on where we can decrease certain areas within my budget and maybe increase areas such as this one. I plan on doing that.
Did you, Mr. Chair, did you have any thoughts, initial thoughts on, assuming everything stays where it is? You do, you know, we are looking at a $22 million deficit in this budget.
Correct. Through the chairman and the councilman, I understand is that right now, I'll make sure that I address that in the response to council.
Any other questions? Ms. Simon?
Mr. Chair, just a comment about the characterization of the budget to my colleague, and just in terms of characterizing a deficit. Is that something that we've established with regard to an actual deficit, or just how the budget's functioning in terms of potentially going into a reserve?
Well, I can respond by saying that it is established that the $22 million is being taken from the public assistance fund in the levy account and moving it back into the main levy accounts to enable the levy funds to balance. As to whether we want to characterize that as a deficit or whether it's characterized in some other way, that's up to how anyone chooses to interpret that.
Thank you very much for that clarification, because I'm not sure that, a definitive statement that it's a deficit, necessarily is the consensus. So I just wanted to make that clear, that we're balancing the budget within Health and Human Services with the carryover rainy day fund.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Just to respond, anytime your operating expenses exceed your operating revenue, you have a deficit. In your household, if you had that scenario and you're dipping into your savings account to fund the operation, to fund your living, which is what we're doing right now, this model itself, we don't need to get into a philosophical debate. However, we couldn't sustain this for more than 3 years. This current, if this methodology of dipping into the reserves to cover the deficit, I'll refer to it, the deficiency between expenses, revenue to expenses, is not sustainable. That's my statement. So if you look at it from the perspective, our expenses exceed our revenue, and then that would be a deficit. I think by anyone's definition, we just have to be fortunate to have a reserve to be able to dip into, if we so choose, to fund that fund the deficit in order to provide a balance. That's my only statement on that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, colleague Greenspan.
Regardless of how we characterize it, what our response and how we deal with that situation, both now and in the longer term, is one of the most important issues that we're going to face. So I think it's a good discussion. Any other questions for Mr. Colon? Okay, thank you very much. And we will now recess for 10 minutes. It's 10 after 3, so we'll come back at 3:20, and we will at that time move into the Public Works budget. Thank you.
Public Works.
Understood. Well, I tried to use the normal 2-hour committee slot as a guideline, but I think both you and Dan were in that category. Quite often I'm in that category, so I understand.